By 1815, America was caught up in a flurry of building and land speculation. The commercial activity would soon reach a frenzy and lead to the first of many financial panics. The economic boom had started years earlier, at the end of the War of 1812.
In the aftermath of the War of 1812, Europe, this is the end of the Napoleonic Wars as well, Europe is basically just devastated, and they are unable to rise to the occasion and supply enough raw materials and enough food throughout Western and Eastern Europe.
The demand increased for raw materials from America. American farmers began to receive astonishingly high prices for their goods, giving them additional money to spend on buying land.
This fuels a tremendous real estate boom, a land boom with land speculation.
A westward surge had begun. Small farmers were eager to leave the crowded East, and they pushed west where land was cheap and plentiful. Between 1815 and 1818, land sales more than tripled. In some states, prices climbed as high as $100 an acre. Farmers were buying land on credit, often from small banks with no regulation and with no standard form of currency.
Today, we are all familiar with American dollars. Everyone uses American dollars. At this time in the Republic, that's not true. You have banks that are state banks, you have branch banks of the National Bank, you have local banks like, the Farmington Mechanics Bank that is quite a small bank. They print their own banknotes. So you could have anywhere from, 10 to 1,000 different banknotes that are in circulation in any given town or city.
The banknotes issued by local banks were promissory notes, effectively IOUs.
But how good they were depended upon people's perception of how sound the bank was. And an awful lot of states had very lax banking laws, and a lot of banks were just plain frauds. And there were thousands of them, thousands and thousands of them. And publishers made money publishing what were called banknote detectors. And they would give you information as whether the bank was sound or not. And so you come into a store trying to pass one of these notes to buy groceries, well, the guy would get out his banknote detector and look it up and say, oh yes, this is a sound bank in Pittsburgh. I'll take that note. It was chaos.
In 1816, Congress chartered the Second Bank of the United States. Like the first national bank created by Alexander Hamilton, it would provide for one standard currency across the country and help to control the local banks.
And one of the things that the Bank of the United States does is it helps to cause these other banks, these smaller banks, to control how much paper money they actually print. Because the idea is that you're never supposed to print more paper money than you have gold or silver, the hard money, to back it up.
In 1819, the Bank of the United States began collecting state banknotes and demanded payment from the banks in hard money. But many of the banks could not meet the demand and promptly failed.
And you get what becomes known as the Panic of 1819. And that causes a lot of economic problems, especially for the Second Bank of the United States, which is left holding lots of mortgages. And they start foreclosing, and it exacerbates the panic.
The Bank of the United States called in its loans, and so did the smaller state banks. Thousands of farmers were ruined in the process. They blamed the Bank of the United States for their problems, and a new political movement would rise out of their resentment, bringing Western farmers together with urban working men and Southern planters. Their candidate would be a Westerner with a seething hatred for banks and the men who ran them, Andrew Jackson.